My name's Rachel Sheley. I work at, not Deep Sea, Deep Sea. We got some marketing out of that one, I can tell you. I've been a CISO for a long time. I have extensive background in strategic and executive briefings through working usually under CIOs at organizations, healthcare, higher ed, manufacturing, you name it. Over the years, there's been a lot of transitions that have occurred where we've taken on either new clients that have kicked their previous CISO either to the term from a managed services security provider, or
you want to do the resume review?
They've decided to take on.
If you see Dave Hatter, he's with you.
Okay. And or they have decided to not pay for a full-time employee and want a fractional CISO. So that's basically it. What we do at Deep Seas and in my capacity is we try to make sure that our clients are able to trust us, right? From when we transition, it makes it a little bit more aligned with what they're doing. So today we're going to cover CISO Advisory Evolution, a transition checklist for CISOs to use. We're going to talk about building that trust relationship and also how to make a strategic prioritization for impact and some real-world lessons and frameworks around that. So as we talk about the evolving role of a CISO, I think, back 5 years ago, CISOs were more reactive, checkbox driven. Whereas today, in a CISO role, you're expected to know everything about the security of an organization, whether that's your mean time to respond, mean time to detect, or those vulnerability assessments that we undergo. The boardroom wants to know what we're doing and how we're remediating them. A lot of times, from the aspect of CISO, we're not the tools people, we're the ones who consume those reports, right? We report that up to a higher level. We want to focus on getting that strategic alignment with those technicians and engineers underneath us, but not necessarily getting into the weeds of how we're going to patch a port, right? Or apply a patch to a vulnerability in the Windows operating system. What we want to know is how many patches we're able to apply over a certain cadence of time, or we want to know that the vulnerabilities are remediated and then retested and shown that we definitely did get, thank you for that, did get the remediation completed, right? We're not just worried about the remediation efforts itself. We do draft policies, but we prefer to be the governance oversight of the policies and procedures, right? So we're looking to take those documents, make sure that they are subscribed to with either a technical or other type of control put in place to align with the policy or the procedure. We don't necessarily go and make the firewall more secure, right? Let's see here. Sorry, I'm nervous. I can't help it. I'm trying. This is like the first one I've done. Amongst friends. So when we first start to talk with a client, typically we're looking to make friends, right? We want to be friendly with the person. Sometimes the executive that we're dealing with may have a bad taste in their mouth from CISO experiences in the past. So we want to welcome their feedback, and we want to glean from them any information or concerns that they had in previous relationships. So right off the bat, we want to try to make them feel comfortable and also clearly let them know that we're not going to be that person, right, that they had in the past. This you do by clearly articulating and communicating and being very concise in what you do. Sometimes I've seen like reports go out that are just horrible, and a CISO would never put their name behind that. You would peer review it before it would go out to the client to make sure that they understand that you've got their back, right? Nobody wants a crap report. Sorry. So we're trying to build credibility and strategic alignment. Here's that checklist. It's 3 slides. I think if you want to prepare for a really rock-solid transition, you're going to do your preparation, right? You're going to talk to internal and external stakeholders as you can. For an example, I just lost a client to a third party just because we weren't aligned from a strategic path, but also because we had some conflicts with some of the projects that we were doing for the client, so it wasn't all on me to carry the client. But what I can say is they brought in their third party that they were going to have a transition conversation. And I think that's huge. I haven't ever been on the opposite side of that. I've been on the receiving side of that. But it was so clear that the person on the other side had a good understanding of what we were doing and where we might have missed the purpose for the client. Sales can also be a very big benefactor in these circumstances because they are the first ones, in some cases, that talk to the client, right? So they're doing a light discovery before we even really get engaged with the client. So trying to align with anybody, internal and external, that you're able to is huge. I always like to take my clients through their statement of work on the first or second call because it level sets everybody, right? What's in it's a contract, right? Yes, there's gray areas, but you're putting out there what's pretty much going to be the program for their cybersecurity maturity and defensibility. I also do, right off the cuff, start setting up my office hours meetings. I'm not sure if anybody else in here does the office hours as a CISO in that capacity, but I do like to get them scheduled right out of the gate. That way the client knows exactly when they're going to meet. And I'm not one to move or adjust or cancel my meeting. I'm pretty tough on myself about that. You know, the other part is making sure you have your clear communication methods, right? We don't just send emails because we feel like it. We send them with purpose and intent. One of the other strong areas of your checklist would be their artifacts from previous engagements or anything they have in their library of documents coming over to you. Now, I have to trust you with this information that I will be like stabbing somebody in the eye with a fork if I have to read through all of their documents that they want to throw at the wall. So I have a little bit of constraint around that. I'll say if your documents haven't been updated within the past year, then I'm not going to take them forward because they're really, if you had a risk assessment, they wouldn't really be considered an active document at that point, because part of your risk assessment, all of your -1 controls in this 853 at least, want you to have them updated within the year. So I do put a line on there, a line in the sand there. Because they can throw everything, it's like an audit, they throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And you do have time to preview their documents ahead of time, but you don't have all the time in the world. Some of the other things that I like to make sure I get is their risk register, at least their top 10 risks from their last risk assessment if they've had one. A lot of times a client will come to us because of a bad incident, right? They've had a breach, and that's why we get them. So if they had a breach, in some cases, their cybersecurity program is not as robust or defensible as it should be. They may not have a risk register. But that tweaks my conversation with the client to be where I would say, let's get your enterprise risk assessment one of the first things we accomplish, right? So we can get a finger on the pulse. Okay, here's some more. Meeting documentation and accountability. I don't know if you guys are familiar with a RAID log. We use those exclusively at our place. Risks, action, issues, and decisions. Fantastic for a conversation to be recorded. Although now you have chat or Copilot in your meetings if you're using Teams. I'm not sure about Zoom, but we use Copilot a lot to take meeting minute notes, and it gives you next steps and actions, which can then be translated into RAID log. But I like having the RAID log and discussing that with my clients during office hours, because they're listening to me, I'm listening to them, and we're making decisions or actions or talking about issues right then and there. And I'll share my screen so they can see what I'm putting in as well. I also like to set up a centralized location for sharing and collaboration. We use SharePoint. We're a team shop, Microsoft shop. So Teams, SharePoint, and MS Planner. MS Planner can turn into a RAID log if you didn't have one, instead of using a Excel spreadsheet. And you can load your contacts in there if your external clients are having access to your Teams environment. Tools and reporting. Of course, we talked a little bit about tools in the beginning. I don't want necessarily to get into the tools of the client. I want the reports that come out of them so that I can create a dashboard or put metrics or key performance indicators together for the client to report up to the board, and or if I'm going to do the board report, I still run it through the client contact first. A lot of times we stand up information security committees. That's one level below the board with the charge of having some authority to be able to make decisions, remediate risks, or talk about risk treatment and things like that. Again, I'm not a tool person. I would have people for that. I'm more apt to look towards getting those reports out of the systems. If I were to get access, it would probably be view only. I wouldn't be in there doing any configuration. Let's see here, active and planned initiatives. So I do like to review with my clients from a CISO advisory level all of their program plans for the entire year. It's important to make sure you're on the same page as them. So if they're having an enterprise risk assessment, I want to make sure that I'm involved. I will go to the risk assessment interview sessions. Sometimes I can't attend all, but I'll pop in and out so I can kind of hear the conversation. But I definitely go to the risk workshop and make sure that I am, in most cases, seen and heard as helping them prioritize the impact and probability of the risk. Another thing that when you become a CISO or you're working in that capacity, we don't want to become project managers. We don't want to be the operational eyes of the house. We want to be the strategic alignment with the business. So that being said, we want to work on a strategic roadmap for the client, not necessarily a project program plan. Although they do sometimes overlay each other, but I don't know how you guys handle things at your companies, but we have project managers for that, so they manage the project side. Obviously, as a transition is going along, you want to identify any of the in-flight program initiatives that are going on with the client and make sure you make them a priority, because you're wanting to get that trust built with the client, especially if they've been through a bunch of CISOs or don't have trust in what's happening. And sometimes the decision is not up to the person that's the main point of contact. It's just been handed to them that they need to work with this individual on the other side. I've had comments told to me about previous CISOs, well, that's big shoes to fill, and I'm like, okay then, here we go. You know, but it takes time. It takes several months to get yourself level set with a client, especially during a transition. A couple more things for the transition checklist. If it's an internal transition, it should be easier for anybody, but that's not always the case, especially if there's somebody who is disgruntled and leaving the organization that you work at, and you get one of their clients that can kind of bite you. But we learn to work with it and build that trust again by being transparent and consistent. Ongoing success and relationship management, of course, make sure that we're always working towards the same goals. Also, checking in again after 60 days is a good pulse point, in my opinion, to make sure that we're hitting the mark. I'd hate to go for 6 months or a year and know that the client isn't happy, you know, and it's their CISO that's driving that madness because they've just been sitting on it for a year and spending all that money and not being happy. That's bad for business. Building trust with skeptical clients. Of course, if you have a project manager, the project manager can be your bad guy, because your CISO would be working with the clients directly most of the time. They can step in, I don't mean bad guy, but they can come in and ask the pointed questions that a CISO may not necessarily want to ask to ruffle any feathers. Demonstrate continuity, so if the clients that you're working with or the team internally that you're working with has had some past decisions that were, you know, good, bad, or indifferent, you can just remind them of them and try to work towards better solutions if needed. Work on quick risk reductions. Every time there's a test, penetration testing, vulnerability assessments, risk assessments, even tabletops, right? There's always low-hanging fruit that you can accomplish quickly. Those are early and easy wins to get treated and rectified. So going into the next test or the next assessment or the tabletop, you've already covered the low-hanging fruit, right? They're easy and it helps with that skeptical client. Help the organization learn to internalize security as a shared responsibility. I'm sure all of you know IT is always responsible for security, right? No. But it's hard to get that buy-in, right? It's hard to get it outside of just the IT group. So we like to try to engage other departments, and that information security committee is a key way to do that, because you identify stakeholders across the organization that can come to the table, and then you have them help be a driver with getting things accomplished. For example, if you're doing security awareness training, you know, whenever that campaign goes out for annual training, everybody's like, oh my God, IT, why do we need to do this? But if you have every person that's stakeholder that's in your committee help drive the message, it becomes a lot less, you know, treacherous. Focus on shared outcomes and evolution. So anytime we need to move the needle forward, we want to make sure we engage with those key stakeholders and have them help drive those messages. It just works. IT is not out to get people. We're out to protect people and protect our environments. Build credibility through transparency and documentation. Of course, if you're writing docs like security awareness training, who's usually involved in that? HR, right? HR is a big training records collector, I would hope. Not always, but if it's in fact true, use HR to help drive those messages as well. Or business manager, business department owner. It helps get the message across. From tactical noise to boardroom impact. So what I like to do is I like to map those controls to a business outcome. What I like to do is give real world scenarios or examples on everything, because that just speaks volumes to executive leadership. They don't understand IT, the mapping of the controls. They don't understand the language that's there in many cases. So I like to give them a real life example so that they can understand it more effectively. I like to prioritize risk by impact, not visibility. So just because it's the biggest risk doesn't mean that we need to, share that across the company. Let's look at the low-hanging fruit, get those accomplished, because those can be winners all day long. Replace tactical Gantt charts with strategic roadmaps. I think a Gantt chart is great and it has its purposes, but a strategic roadmap that aligns with business risk objectives is and can be a huge driver. In addition, if you can map the roadmap with the controls to the business risk objective and put dollars and cents in there, you're going to win. You're going to win over the company in many cases. We use a living risk register. I know a lot of people use a GRC tool. I haven't found one that's better than a spreadsheet, honestly. It stinks, but the spreadsheets, at least I can get them quickly, easily, and I know exactly what my columns, I can add, take away columns. In a GRC tool, you're really limited on what you can do to change the application. There's many out there, and some of them cost a fortune, but the roadmap in a risk register and an Excel spreadsheet works pretty well for me. And we do review them at least quarterly, unless there's some big initiative that we're working on. I do them quarterly with my clients. Also, we want to show recommendations driving compliance, resilience, and our cost savings. So, especially now with many of our customers moving to SaaS models, especially in higher ed, they're using a student information system that's going to be a cloud-based application fully now. They're not going to have anything on-prem. What's the cost difference for that data center on site, right? Let's get those numbers together and drive that home, right? A lot of higher ed clients can't even move to cloud-based fully because they have so much custom built things around their one that was on-prem, which stinks because when they go to cloud, they're not going to be able to have that customization. They will lose that, but it is what it is, I guess. All right, so lessons in strategic prioritization. Strategy before tools, right? We can get what we want out of the tools we currently have, but let's talk about the strategy. What are our goals? What things do we need to comply with? What are the regulations that we need to adhere to? What if we fail to adhere, what could that cost look like? How bad could it be? Let's talk about those things before we talk about tools to rectify them. Governance artifacts are a force multiplier, so client profile, if you can get one built at your organization, is key. Where sales puts in what they learn about a client, and you can go in and tell the system what you know about a client, you can make a more effective communication process with your client. So if a client uses Cisco umbrella, then guess what? We put that in there. Anytime a Cisco vulnerability comes out, we can go ahead and give them threat intelligence on that. Without a client profile and a database being built behind you, you're managing things onesie-twosie, which is bad for business. Early transparency reduces long-term resistance, so be honest and open with your clients. That's key in my opinion. Keep them abreast of what's going on out there. Make sure you're responding to them. We do 24 to 48 hours to get back to our clients. I try to beat that. I just get back right away. I'm always the driver of my inbox is telling me what I need to do versus, you know, the long-term stuff. But I try to let the client know, even if I don't have an anticipated response time for them, I'll ask them, what do you need this by, you know? A skeptical client is a signal. Lean into it and delicately demonstrate your subject matter expertise, right? That's what we are, right? We're subject matter expertise in security, technology, and don't let that fall by the wayside. I mean, really, lean into it and demonstrate that in front of your client. Because trust is built through clarity and not complexity. We don't need, you know, you don't need a technical guy on the phone to talk about strategy. You know, you need business-oriented people to help drive those conversations. And also, one thing that I had to learn the hard way is I am not always the smartest person in the room. So if I need to ask somebody to come to help me out with something, it shows that I'm willing to still reach out and learn from someone else who may have better expertise in the area. So, any questions or any discussion that you guys would like to have, I'm open. For anything you want to talk about.
I have a question. What trends, from when you started, because it sounds like you've been doing this for quite a while. So for people that are trying to get into this, let me rephrase the question. For people that are trying to get into it, how would you recommend, or what would you recommend their path to start doing this? Is this, go work for a company that does this, sort of try it out in their organization and then transition? What would that pathway look like if they wanted to become a virtual CISO?
Well, that is a very good question. I started out as an information security officer, and then we all went through COVID, and the company that was I had a CISO as a third party, and the company that I had as my third party CISO actually ended up hiring me like after COVID hit, like a year or so down the line. So I got fortunate, right? And nobody wants to start as an analyst or a specialist because, I mean, we've got some young guys in the room, but at my age, I can't afford to take a step back to do that. What I would suggest doing is trying to find a 1099 job where you can step into the role and be like an advisor. So it's in addition to your regular role, right? And learn from that. I did a lot of that as well when during COVID. So that could be beneficial there. But I'm a student. I'm still in school going for my doctorate. So I don't think that wins me any points though. With when you apply for a job, I think people think you're too qualified or you're crazy because you got a doctor, you're working on a doctorate. I have heard some bad things about it, but I was just lucky. So I would just suggest if you're in the field and you're working in that capacity, trying to get some 1099s, they're always out there. There was one the other day, it was a fractional CISO. I think it was on either LinkedIn or Indeed. And apply for it and see what you get. I mean, we're still in technology and security. It's not that hard to do. You're more of I would say I'm more times than not a project manager than.
I was going to just tell you that I am a project manager and half the stuff you're talking about is all bad guy.
No, I don't mean it that way, but sometimes bad guy, like no, good in a good way, right?
I have all the other security things and kind of thing on us, but everything you're saying is true. You got to have a strategy. I do the whole constantly business objectives.
Yeah.
What are we trying to do?
Yeah.
Keeping everybody in the loop, like you said, not just IT.
Yeah.
I can't believe if anyone's still doing that.
Yeah, well, it's tough. I have about 20 or 25 clients right now, and that's a big load of clients. We're a small organization, But what I can say is some of my clients are really close-lipped about a lot of things, so I don't get a lot of, insight into their environment. I'm more reactive for them. They're like the old school. But then you get the clients that want you to be in everything, and you only have, as a fractional CISO, you only have a certain amount of time that you can dedicate, especially when you have 20 or 25 clients, right? There's only so many hours in the week and so many days in the week that you can spend on it. With work-life balance, I might have, But honestly, I do a lot of project management. But that helps my project managers too, right? Because they ask me questions, or maybe I could get a better project manager. Because, it's tough. But yeah, I would suggest doing a fractional. Try to get a fractional job.
Are you in your role doing like the actual business impact analysis and IR plans? It seems hard to be able to do that when you've got 20 to 25 clients to sync that amount of time.
Yeah, we do it all. It just depends. See, each client is different. Some clients can come to us and say, we only need you once a month. Those ones, you don't get a lot of time. But you get the ones where you have twice a month, plus they have all the projects going on, right? So you're attending their risk assessment, you're attending their workshops, also their tabletops, if they have them. We attend those too, because you have to be a part of what the client wants you to be a part of, right? And as their CISO, in some cases, they want you to be a direct extension of their team. It's just different. It varies. But being a fractional CISO, I would say, is tough. Because you just don't get enough time with your clients that you would like, I think.
It's a two-way street, because it's one year fraction, which means we've agreed that I'm not going to be at your beck and call every single, and then the opposite is what you're saying.
Yes. And then they send you a lot. So it ebbs and flows. But overarchingly, I love being in cybersecurity. I love what I do. And if you looked at the CISOs that we have on staff, you have some where they're specialists in higher ed. I do have higher ed clients, but I'm probably not the best at that. I'm better at compliance, right? So looking at what you need to comply with, how do you get the control implemented, and talking about the business strategy behind it. Which I'm sure Barry's great at that as well, but he's very specific in higher ed. Whereas I have like a bunch of different clients, so I'm kind of like all over the place, But even if you, I don't know where you work now, but if you worked wherever you're working, try to needle your way in there.
Oh, no, I have a company and they do this service. The perspective was, I appreciated your perspective because you come at it from a different way. I'll tell you, like, we won't sell an engagement for under 6 hours a week. So, but you meet a different market niche, right? So there are people out there that are like, I just want to see you once a month, and I think that is far more complex, especially as a senior like yourself, in the profession, to be able to say, okay, let's take all of that data, and then all of a sudden I'm supposed to, normalize it and then help you do your strategy and everything like that. And I also appreciated your comments about the tools. Finding a tool, sometimes I'd rather just blow my brains out, because if I see another document management solution with a wrapper around it saying that it's a GRC solution, I'm going to explode.
Yeah, we've been forced with some platforms, and honestly, platforms don't drive the world. They don't. There's a reason why Word, Excel, PowerPoint have existed for as many years as they have, in my opinion. I just love the fact that I can go into Excel and I can manipulate data any way I want it. And now with the Copilot built into it, it's even more robust. If your organization is letting you use it, you can take it and you can tell it exactly what you want to do, and it'll put it into a chart for you. I used to struggle with pivot tables all the time. Wait, I didn't want to see it that way, I want to see it this way. But GRC tools,
Or, I don't know if you've encountered this a lot, but with AI, a lot of, it's bad enough when people were trying to use templates, and then they do a find and replace, and then they die in audit, the external evaluations. But now, when you've got tools like Drata that are like, okay, you'll get your SOC 2 Type 2 in 60 days, and it's not worth anything. I think that it makes the virtual CISO's job even more difficult.
well, luckily, my coworker just took all of our policies and procedures and he created a project in ChatGPT. And it's not proprietary information, it's just around controls. There's no client information in it at all. And he has repolished our whole entire document library. And if you compare what he has done, I'm just a peer reviewer, that's all. And I go in and I use these templates, and it's based on Vanta, SOC 2 Type 2 policies and procedures, and I'm like, whoa, because they don't compare. There's no comparison. I have to find the difference between what we can provide them and what they got out of the Vanta application. And it's a complete and utter mess. What we can provide them is so much better than what's coming out of Vanta, is my point.
It's customized to their organization.
Yeah. And another thing that I'll say with another platform that we use, they do policies, but they don't tell you whether your policy is implemented, or the control is implemented or not. It's either all or just the completed ones. Well, where's my delta? I need to see my delta, and there's just no way to get it out of there, not in a policy format. So the work is 3 times as much because now you have to go back and figure out what's missing. And there's just no easy way to do it. So we use the standard Word, find and replace, but we're very good at how we map out the documents so we have brackets around them. You know how it is. You do your best, but usually I could get a junior resource to kind of work on that, but then I have to still peer review it. There's just no way to get away from it. So it's all good stuff. Keeps us going every day.
Back in like 2000, I had a company in New York City. They started working with the department. We did budgeting and forecasting. This is to the point about Excel, and always around reports. And the idea was to replace everyone was doing budget and forecast spreadsheet, pass it around. And I'm a hospitality, mostly at the time too. And so all the departments and in the areas and the states, and so no matter how we cut it, everybody preferred, still to this day, they say their Excel spreadsheet. The difference now, though, and we did it actually back then. We connected to databases, and then we could pull up, and then everybody had their spreadsheet to do the report, and everyone was happy.
Yeah.
Even though we did it in reverse.
Yeah.
But the point is, some of the stuff is just simple. It does the job, because the other stuff is heavily complicated. That's what happened with Microsoft.
And it's expensive.
Inexpensive.
Expensive. I mean, who doesn't use Microsoft? And especially in higher ed, they use it exclusively because they get such good discounting, with the academic side of the house. I'm pushing more for peer review, for DLP, and also for MAM, so mobile application management, where I don't know if anybody was in the previous session where you don't have to control your people's phones. You control the content in the container in your mobile application management. So I'm pushing that a lot now. But you gotta have E5 or A5 or whatever it is, and there is a significant difference in cost. But if the phone if it's jailbroken, you don't get it. It's a little bit of a vulnerability check. And when you leave, you just take it off. So that's what I like. One of the other key things that we're seeing a lot of now is a lot of organizations are now circling around data governance. Data governance. Nobody knows, like the previous session to me was AI. with AI on top of data governance, nobody knows what's going on out there, where their data is going, where it's flowing to, what their system asset inventory is, critical sensitive data. It's nuts. And I'm just not well versed at it. I can think it through theoretically, but to put all of the pieces together in a very big enterprise, I would be nervous. You need a team, I think, to do it. I don't think it can, it probably could be done by one person, but if you have a small environment. But that's what we're seeing. Any other questions? Concerns? Topics of interest? Was I really fast? I guess I was nervous, sorry.
You did good.
I just read the slides, which I should have just done. Instead, I took all these notes and.
You're great. Thank you.